afternoon, Namibia, and welcome to this year's first edition of Diamond Talk. I'm Helena Motsing, and it's such a pleasure to be with you this afternoon, not only because it's the first edition for the year, but also because it's Namibia's 31st birthday. So happy birthday, Namibia. Happy birthday to all Namibians, wherever you're tuning in from. Thank you so much for making time to be with us. Now, on today's Diamond Talk, we've got a very exciting topic that we will be unpacking, and we're really looking at what contribution diamonds have made to Namibia's development, particularly post-independence. Since its discovery in 1908 in the historic Spiergebied area, the diamond and its exploration has been leading economic growth and thereby catapulting development. As we reflect on 31 years of independence, we quantify the value of the Namibian diamond to the country, as well as how that value has benefited Namibians. To that end, I'm joined by a panel of experts this afternoon to help us answer that question. To my immediate left, I'm joined by Mr. Mali Likukela, a Namibian economist, whom by now I think we all know. Next to him, we are joined by Ms. Beverly Kusamon, who is the public relations practitioner from NAMDIA. NAMDIA being part of the value chain, as you by now would know. Next to her, I'm delighted to introduce Mr. Willie Mertens, who is also the Chief Financial Officer at Debmarine Namibia. Now, since these discussions started last year, we've always used every opportunity to give you a proper snapshot of what fills the diamond value chain. So all the speakers, with the exception of our economist here today, form part of that value chain. Before we get into the discussion, I just want to remind all of our viewers that our competition continues to go on. This time around, we're delivering in a slightly different mode. So what we require from you is, first of all, please watch this broadcast to its conclusion, because in it, I'm quite sure you'll find valuable keys to the answer of the question that I'm about to pose. And that question is really simple. Can you tell us which year the 50-50 partnership between the Namibian government and the De Beers group of companies was formed? Quite frankly, you could even go as far as telling us why was it formed. Namibia is deemed a country blessed with the best diamonds in the world. And to give more value to that statement, the next insert will share a bit more. Stay tuned as we listen to this.
The Namibian diamond is special because they say it has a higher jewelry value than other diamonds. When you take 100 diamonds in other countries, I don't know, just a certain percentage can be used for jewelry, but for the Namibian diamonds, you can use a much higher percentage of diamonds for jewelry. And we often have clients who come in and actually specifically ask for a Namibian diamond.
A few facts on the Namibian diamond. When you look at just from a factual perspective, the Namibian diamond has the highest dollar per carat in the world. It ranges from anything to 500 a carat to 700 a carat. By comparison, you look at bigger producers who per carat in dollar per carat is hovering between 120 and 200 dollars per carat. So that gives you a perspective as to how sort of desired the Namibian diamond is. And the other fact is the fact that Namibian diamonds are really not mined from a kimberlite pipe. They are what we call alluvial. Obviously, through the process of running through the big river, they have been rounded, and they are nice. The shape, or what we call the shape, is quite nice from a manufacturing perspective. So you get better yield from it. Some cases the colors get better when you have polished it. And really, because of that, that's why it is quite a desirable item for the manufacturers of diamonds.
We had the ambition of creating a purely 100% Namibian product. And that was basically buying rough diamonds with the origin of Namibia, which is called unaggregated rough from NDTC, and being able to follow that process in terms of manufacturing with Namibian cutters, in Namibia, obviously. Into a cut that was specifically designed for Namibia. The Namibian sun is literally the sun as it's designed on the map of on the flag of Namibia.
It's quite amazing because in Namibia we do have special designs and special cuts. We have cut, say for example, I know a factory that has a brand called Crown of Light. And this brand polishes about 100 facets of the stone. And it brings out a more bigger, nicer sparkle. And I believe I would be the one who would want to chase a stone that is a crown of light when I find it anywhere to buy it and put it in a ring or in a watch. I feel happy and I'm proud when I see a Namibian stone move through the value chain. So yes, most of these stones, we are as brokers, we are already exposed and now we know and we are aware, but it brings more pride knowing that it's been found in our own countries.
Gentlemen, lady, they are alluvial. They're the best diamonds in the world. They've got great shapes. These are Namibian diamonds. I want to believe that, thinking that it's independence, it's not just the products that we're talking about, but I think Namibians in general, we can be the best in the world. So that's a really good aspiration to live up to. But I want to get into the conversation of what we've just looked at. In your view, what comes to your mind, Mr. Lukela, when you hear that Namibia's got the best diamonds and they can fetch quite good market prices too?
Well, what comes to my mind when I listen to the inset is I get inspired, first of all. I get so inspired that Namibia is sitting on such potential, huge potential, and for me, it tells me that the future is really bright, as it's contained in our brightest diamonds.
I love what you're saying. The future is really bright, despite the COVID-19 pandemic.
Oh, yes.
The future remains bright. The good thing is that diamonds were not affected physically in any way by this pandemic. Beverly, your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that?
I would like to add on what he actually said in terms of it's quite inspirational. And, from the branding perspective, there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of potential on a global platform, especially in terms of Namibia, because I believe that at the current moment, Namibia is known for its beautiful diamonds, but only within the diamond industry. It's still not really known from, an everyday consumer on the street, in a sense. So I think that gives us inspiration and also the drive to actually want to put the Namibian diamond right there on the map so that it can stand on its own without actually being identified as a diamond that comes from what company or that company, but as a Namibian stone.
I love what you're saying, and this is really what Diamond Talk is about, Mr. Mertens. It's really the idea of trying to push a narrative that says, look, we've got one diamond. It just fits in different parts of this value chain at different times, but at the end of the day, it is a Namibian diamond. And Deb Marine is really at the cutting edge of some of the technology and some of the manner in which we mine these diamonds. Your thoughts, Mr. Mertens, do you think it's aspirational enough to keep us afloat over the next decades?
Elena, certainly so. And I think I want to take you a little bit back in terms of how the diamonds got there. Because it will just tell us how unique Namibia is. Because diamonds do not naturally come, they don't come from the kimberlites, as you've explained. But there was a kimberlite burst millions of years ago in South Africa. And the diamonds were transported to the Atlantic Ocean through the Orange River. At that time, it was a much stronger river than what it is today. Mm-hmm. So when it landed in the mouth of the Orange River, the currents took it north towards Namibia and not to the south of South Africa. So that's how Ranjemund was formed, because the heavier diamonds were dropped there just for us, and the lighter diamonds sort of moved up northwards towards Lüderitz and the areas north of Lüderitz. So we must have done something good for the heavens to bless us with
absolutely,
such shiny
I love
stones.
that.
So that's a little bit of a history in terms of how the diamonds got here into Namibia. And I think we have to treasure that, and we have to do something with it so that when we are not here around, the people that are coming after us can still enjoy the benefits of the diamond. And we still have a long history. We've got a long history. We still have a long future to go. We still have probably north of 30 years of diamonds that we can recover in the sea.
I want to just hone in some of the manner in which we mine in Namibia. Globally, I'm assuming from a consumer perspective, we know how important the whole conversation around ethically sourced diamonds are. In your view, first of all, perhaps we can start off by sharing with our audience, are Namibian diamonds mined ethically? And if so, what is the value contribution towards our Namibian diamond narrative that ethically sourced portion plays in?
Yeah. Ethically, it talks about a lot of things. We talk about human rights, that we are not using child labor, we are not using forced labor, we are looking after the environment. And sometimes when you talk about mining in the sea, we should actually change that narrative to recovering, because mining means you're digging a hole and you're leaving a big hole there. So we're just recovering the diamonds, we're putting back almost 99% of the sediment back into the sea, so that the environmental process can take place naturally. So that in that way, we can show to the world that we are not disturbing the seabed, that the fishing can continue. So that is part of that ethical process. And that helps us to charge a premium on our products, because the diamonds, the good that the diamonds are doing into Namibia, and we'll probably talk about that a little bit later, and that's the piece that we need to sell as to what are the diamonds doing, what good are the diamonds doing in the countries in which they are recovered or produced.
That's a really, really good segment to introduce my next question to you, Mr. Lekela. Since independence and even prior to that, the diamond sector has remained a huge player in our strategic development. How have we aligned ourselves to harness this value with regards to industrialization and social? And I'm really happy that you sort of hinged on what diamonds are doing in Namibia, because we can slightly move in that direction. A lot of time people would ask you, but what are diamonds doing? Can you help us answer that question?
Yes, definitely. Like you said, we have Namibia's history and that of diamond mining, they come a long way. And if you look into history in terms of how the country has been shaping its developmental transformation, you can clearly see that diamond was at the center of it all. This I'm saying is because the mining sector as a sector is the key sector in the economy. And within the mining sector, diamond is number one. So whatever development priorities and agendas that were set needed to be backed by a certain value to see it or to actuate it. And in all this transformation, you have seen that diamond mining as a segment of mining sector is outstanding. So in terms of really realizing a lot of value from the sector, government has put in place mechanism to ensure that every Namibia benefits. Mali does not have to go and work at Namdeb to benefit. Mali does not have to go and get a mining right to benefit. But through the royalties that are collected, taxes that are paid to the state put it together and make sure that they address my needs. And throughout the 31 years of economic planning, we are seeing that spirit. And I do believe that it's because of that understanding to say that everybody must benefit. We have seen that NDP 1, 2, 3, 4, Harambee, up to today, when we talk of growth at home, there is the strategy that government is working on now to ensure that there's value addition. And diamond, gemstone, jewelry industry is priority there. And so you can see that development of Namibia has been quite closer to the state of diamond mining in Namibia.
Fantastic. That's really, really well said. Beverly, 25% of our GDP comes from mining, and more than half of that comes from diamonds. Do you think we're doing enough?
There's always room for growth. But if you look at what we have contributed thus far, and just like Mali also said, we have created in tremendous value. And this tremendous value has obviously permeated throughout the entire country in various aspects. For example, when it comes to job creations, when it comes to skills transfer. So you have all these very intricate aspects of it that are contributing within that 25% of the GDP. It's contributing within those sectors. So we have done quite a lot. There is still a lot that we can do. But the great thing is once skills are transferred within the Namibian hand, then that's when you start seeing tremendous growth. And then that's when you see tremendous potential, because the skills do not leave our borders. And that's the great thing about what we are currently doing and what we can continue doing in expanding. If we move from 25% to 35%, why not? And that's where, and it's always good, because then it's something that we can work towards.
Mr. Mertens, just before we go on a bit of a break, your thoughts, do you think diamonds are doing enough?
I think certainly so. And I agree with Beverly. There's always room for improvement. And even, if you look at that contribution, diamonds alone being close to 9-10% of GDP, it also contributes to export earnings. Close to 25% of the export earnings are attributed to diamonds. So that's just the financial contribution we're talking about. We're talking about technology. We're talking about the way that we are recovering diamonds off the seabed. Namibia being the only country in the world that is doing that, which means there's no sector that we can just go to and buy off-the-shelf equipment for our vessels. We have to develop that ourselves from scratch. We have to almost scavenge equipment from other industries, put that together and make it work on a vessel, which is capital intensive, which is highly fixed. It's a highly fixed cost operation, and it needs investment in difficult times as well. I remember in 2008 when we had the financial crisis, we continued with investment into people as well as technology. We spent probably close to 120 million annually just on people development. So that is to make sure that the skills, we build our own skills and the skills remain here so that we can be part of that technology growth going forward.
I love what you're saying, and in fact, I love the way that we've all answered this question, because it kind of leads me very well into the next segment of this conversation. So to those people who say diamonds don't do anything, I think these are some of the things that we need to acquaint and familiarize ourselves with, that diamonds do in fact do quite a lot. And even though, like Mr. Likwela was saying, even though you might not directly participate by having a license or being employed in a company that does diamonds, it does not mean that there's no benefit derived from diamonds. Now, since independence, the government has evaluated ways to add value, sort of what you were saying, alluding to earlier, value locally. One such effort was the setting up of joint ventures aimed at local cutting and processing. This is really in some way the genesis of where NDTC comes from, because the purpose for that was to make sure that we kickstart and offset and grow a downstream beneficiation effort. But is this really the only place where we're beneficiating?
Yeah, if I can come in there, yeah, it's not really the only place that we're benefiting. And like my colleagues have said, when you look at diamond, when you look at the impact of diamond, you must understand that diamond is a player forward and backward, what we call backward and forward linkages. When you produce a diamond, you need input, like he said. You need to source stuff from other industry to help you recover the diamond. That's backward linkage. Forward linkage, whatever you produce, you help the industry ahead of you. So in that scope of things, you can see that the benefit of diamond mining is not exhaustible. It's long. The list is ending. And I like the narrative and the spirit of Namibia Development Agenda is to say, in order for us to optimally benefit from diamond, let's prolong. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Let's make the value chain longer, because the longer the value chain, the more value you benefit. And so NDTC being one of such initiatives, it's fantastic. And I'm sure if you look at the Growth at Home strategy, there are quite a number of initiatives there to help prolong the value chain so that we maximize the value from diamond.
Well, thank you for those thoughts, Mr. Likwela. And I think, Mr. Mertens and Beverly, before I get to you, let's have a look at another insert of just other voices that contribute towards what we're talking about, the issue of beneficiation.
In 2001, we came. We were one of the first. We established a factory and started operating. It took several years. We went up to 100 Namibian fully skilled workforce, which we trained. But it took many years before we actually started receiving local supply. It started with Diamdel Namibia, which they basically put together for us to be able to supply us, which was great. And that developed slowly into the NDTC as we know it in 2007, with whom we have been site holders ever since. And we went through the process of beneficiation in terms of not just adding value through cutting and polishing, but really trying to go above and beyond that in terms of the local jewelry industry and how we could do our part.
Beneficiation is obviously depends on, is a perspective of how you look at it. From my point of view, we always have been doing some kind of beneficiation, probably not to the level we are doing it today, because we are providing employment to the locals, we're making contributions to the state coffers in terms of taxes and obviously dividends that have been paid to government. So we were always beneficiating. I think when beneficiation changes, or the term beneficiation actually changes, is when when it all became important, people talking about we want to see value addition being done at home. Most of our raw material, we're just digging them out of the ground or just harvesting them and exporting them. So then a need came to say that we need to add more value to our raw material so that we can employ more, actually create more employment in Namibia, and also create opportunities for locals to participate in the industry.
Many jobs are created in that whole line of the diamond that people do not realize. It starts, of course, with the mining itself, then the sorting, then the cutting and polishing, then the design of a piece of jewelry that you make, then the setting of the stone, which is important, otherwise it falls out, then the sales lady that has to offer the piece of jewelry to the client. So it's a long line, and all this, everywhere there is a job created, there's an income generated, and there are taxes paid.
Brokerage in Namibia is not very common, especially in the diamond industry. It is, although it is common in countries like Europe, Belgium, where the diamond industry or the sales sectors are, where the bosses are, the sales centers are in Israel, in Tel Aviv, or in India. So in Namibia, South Africa, and Botswana, which are the producing countries, it will be very good to draw these services closer.
Very interesting input from the different voices that we heard from Mr. Mertens. But I wanted to zoom in particularly to you, and just for you to kind of give us your thoughts around, in 2020, the Bank of Namibia forecasted a record decline of 24% in real terms due to a lower demand caused by COVID-19, the outbreak, the pandemic. As we speak now, where does the sector find itself, and what plans exist to buffer the impact?
Thank you, Elena. I think that 20%, if you look at what caused it, I think if we can start there. So in the beginning of 2020, when obviously the pandemic came around, there were restrictions around people traveling. So people couldn't go to the diamond centers and buy diamonds. People had different priorities in terms of their health, and the last thing people wanted to do at that point in time was to spend money on luxuries. So the diamond industry, is, same as the rest of the world, or the economic world, took basically a dive. We had to stop production both at the landmines and on the offshore side. We had to park one of our vessels, which are currently parked in Walfish Bay, to try and respond towards that reduced demand. Prices took a dive at that point in time as well. So those are the cumulative impacts of that 24% reduction in the value that we got from diamonds.
I want to take us back, if you would allow me. I want to take us back just a little bit to beneficiation again. And maybe in your view, why was beneficiation of such strategic importance to our government, for example?
I think what we need to do is to get the maximum from our resources for the development of the country. And I think that is an important point that the government wants to put through, because if we just export raw material in its raw form, we are not benefiting from that. So what we need to do is to prolong that pipeline, and I think it's what was used here. So to prolong that pipeline within the borders of Namibia, before the raw material, before the eventual good leaves Namibia. So if we can prolong that pipeline, we'll generate more benefit for Namibia in terms of cash, social impact, social benefits in terms of employment. And what we can do with that cash is to invest it in different infrastructure, roads, schools, hospitals, etc. And so if we don't do that, we will just be the producers of raw material and the exporters of raw material. And I think the economists will tell you that we are in a slightly unfortunate situation as Namibians, that we produce what we don't necessarily consume, and we consume what we don't produce. So that creates that imbalance into the import and export. So we have to, and it's going to be difficult because people need more money to be able to afford the diamond. So we need to generate more money into Namibia so that we can uplift the standard of living in Namibia. And by that, we allow each and every person at least opportunity at some point in the future to benefit from this and being able to walk into a jewelry store and buy a diamond.
I want to stay on this issue of beneficiation, and I really, really appreciate what you've alluded to, particularly the fact that we need to bring in more, right? I'm sure that we've got more challenges in the beneficiation space. Could you maybe point us to some of those challenges, and in your view, how can we overcome them?
Yes, definitely. In fact, I like the segment because last year we just submitted a mineral beneficiation strategy to the minister. He's studying it now. Very soon, maybe he will submit it to cabinet. In there, we outlined the whole idea, the whole agenda, government agenda of beneficiation. When you look at beneficiation, you look at it from two angles. As a politician, when I talk of beneficiation, I'm seeing jobs being created. I'm seeing royalties being increased. But when I talk of beneficiation as a scientist, I am talking of refinement. By refinement, I increase skills, yeah? Because we cannot just be exporting raw. When we beneficiate, when we refine from a scientific point of view, we are developing skills. Now, what are the challenges? We identified a couple of challenges, but number one was infrastructure. It's to create refineries, especially for the larger pool of minerals. Infrastructure was a challenge. Power was a challenge. Skills, still a challenge, because refining and beneficiating, adding value to some of these minerals requires expertise. But we're in the process, and so we made some recommendations to say, well, these are the challenges that we have identified. So these are the things that we think if we put in place, we can overcome these challenges. Let's capacitate our universities, our vocational, so that people are able to have skills. Let's invest in infrastructure to refine, to build a refinery, a plant. How much do we need? We do those calculations. We did those calculations and said, and then we gave it over to Minister of Trade and Industry here. Skills, we speak to the Minister of Higher Education. So there is actually an effort. Right now, there is a document that's already there, and all these recommendations were packaged as a way of responding to that situation that we are talking about.
I'm very optimistic about what you're saying, Mr. Lukela, because one of the things that really stands out for me about the diamond industry is, despite our various thoughts around where the industry is, was, should be, or could be, I'm very confident that the growth and the development over the last 30 years in the industry has taken into account all those dynamics, the technical aspects, the skills aspect, the financial aspect. And I think we've made great strides in that space. That also tells me that going forward with a strategy that is sound, that tells us particularly how we deal around beneficiation, that we're definitely heading towards better times coming. But I think we need to maybe take this conversation to the mining side of things. And with that, I want to take a quick insert and just hear what other voices think around what we are doing, what we ought to be doing, what we could be doing in that space. And when we come back, we can dissect that conversation.
One of the issues we had in terms of continuing was the lack of flexibility in certain ways. And we have to realize that there are two components to the business. The one is our Namibian business, which is, promoting local cutting and polishing in order to create jobs and transfer the right skills to Namibia. On the other hand, we do have to balance with a business that does a lot of trading as well globally.
Of course, the diamond industry in Namibia also depends on supply and demand, as always, and everywhere in the world. And for the last few years, for instance, when the Chinese didn't buy so many diamonds, the whole industry felt it. When the Americans were more careful, the whole industry felt it. I know that the local diamond factories are under pressure, and they have been for a while. In comparison to the cut material, the rough material is too expensive, and many factories complain about that, not only in Namibia. I find that it's good to have them anyway, even though we're doing away with EPZs in Namibia. And it would be difficult to lure new diamond cutting factories to Namibia if we don't have a good investment act, which should be in place, and replace the old one soon, because otherwise there won't be new industries coming.
The bigger picture is, how can we look at long-term investment? And that should start with us as well, a conversation that we amongst ourselves, who feels like the sales, the services, the valuations, the grading systems are favoring the other people more?
The diamond is a luxury item. So one of the challenges that we always going to have is that Namibia, we do not have really the level of income to buy all the diamonds that we mine in Namibia. So it will always be a product that is earmarked for the outside, because those people, they have the money. Because we simply do not have that level of disposable income for us to afford diamonds. Not to say that Namibians do not buy diamonds, we do buy diamonds. The other issue is really, it's quite a highly capital-intensive industry. And for me, that sort of is a barrier to entry for locals.
So, having listened to all these thoughts, Mr. Mertens, around the mining sector, I want to throw this question at you. In 2020, the Bank of Namibia forecasted a record decline of 24% in real terms due to the lower demand caused by the pandemic, by COVID-19. As we speak now, where does the industry stand, or where does the sector find itself, and what would it take for us to buffer ourselves back to where we need to be?
So to answer that question, I think we need to look at the market, the diamond market. So about 45% of the diamonds are being sold in the US or bought by US citizens, and another 24% or by Chinese. So that's where the goods are going. So we need to look at what is happening in those countries to be able to see where the demand is going. So as we know, there were lockdowns in both of those countries towards the beginning of 2020, and that was the cause of that 24%. So as a mining company, we had to respond towards that in terms of reducing demand to be able to supply the reduced demand, reducing supply to supply the reduced demand. So where we are now is towards the end of last year, there was a bit of an uptick in the market, because people had a little bit more disposable income because they couldn't travel to the luxurious holidays. So what people did is they bought more diamonds. So in the beginning of the year, we have seen some of the midstream starting with low stock levels and picking up and buying slightly more diamonds. So that has helped us in the beginning of this year. We also had the Chinese New Year coming up, as well as Valentine's Day. And those factors are playing an important role in where we are currently. It's still not where it should be, because we still have the risks of lockdowns. We still have the risks of travel restrictions going on in key sectors of the diamond market. So until we have a completely relaxed economy, can we go back to a place where we're saying that demand has gone back. So we are still looking at a contracting economy in terms of the demand for diamonds. So we are still looking at, in terms of the mining side, just producing what we think is the level that the market can take at this point in time. We are still concerned, especially in the short term, and Mali can talk to that, in terms of the shape of recovery, as well as the pace of recovery, which is still slow in terms of that. So it's going to take a little bit more, probably towards the end of 2021, for us to get to a place where we can become.
I can see, Mr. Lukela, you're itching to jump into that one. Please go right ahead.
I just touched a nerve. Yeah, in fact, just to add on to what he said, the Bank of Namibia recently, I think last week, they've released what is called the economic outlook. And they've also alluded to what they said, to say, okay, they are expecting a moderate growth in 2021. That is because they are expecting an uptick from the diamond sector. So what he's saying is actually in line with what the Bank of Namibia is saying. And to emphasize that they are saying that in as much as they don't want to be too optimistic, because there are a lot of weakness in the economic structures globally and domestic. But from the domestic point of view, they are counting on that moderate growth to come from diamond. So it's exactly what he was saying, and he's in agreement, and I'm also in agreement, just to emphasize how significant diamond mining is to Namibia.
Fantastic. Beverly, I don't know about you, but when I annually watch the Minister of Finance financial speech, I take a lot of pride in that, because I can see what I do on a day-to-day basis translates into some of those national objectives that we put ourselves in there, and what are the deliverables that we have as a country. But I want to go back to the issue of challenges, because I think it's an issue that we can still explore just a little bit more. In your view, Mr. Mertens, I think in Namibia we do have some challenges, particularly when it comes to financing of diamonds. Do you think there's enough being done in that space? Should we do more? Or do you have other challenges that you feel our audience outside needs to be cognizant of?
I think we have two challenges. One is skills, because it's a unique industry that we are in terms of the offshore diamond mining. And just to give you the magnitude of the challenge is when Debmarine Namibia was established in the beginning of 2000, only 18% of the employees were Namibian.
Wow.
When we got to about 2011, we had the reverse, 90% of those were Namibian. So we needed to invest a lot. But what's currently happening is obviously a lot of artisans are going away. So in terms of skills retention on the mining side, that is a key challenge for us. And because it's not just skills that you can go pick up anyway once someone has left. What the other challenge is also that those people can work anywhere in the world and get paid in US dollars, sometimes tax-free.
That's so true.
So we have to compete with those challenges. When we also, in the beginning of 2000, none of the captains were Namibian. I can proudly say that at this point we have 9 locally trained Namibian captains on our vessels, 9 of them on our 7 vessels. So that's a key challenge. The other one is because it's as I've said in the beginning, it's not a off-the-shelf equipment procurement issue. So we have to invest a lot in research and development, making sure that what we need is what we have to develop ourselves. And so those for me are key challenges. And the biggest one is the diamond market. We are exposed, we are a local entity or we are a local business exposed to global variables in terms of where the exchange rate goes. Now, if the exchange rate, if the Namibia dollar to the US dollar gets higher, it's obviously not good for us as an importer, but for the company, it's a good thing because we're earning more. But that's not what we want, because all the other inputs are becoming expensive. We pay fuel in US dollars. So those are, and the diamonds, diamonds it's a luxury item. When people are struggling, the first thing they leave or not spend on is diamonds. When things come right, the last thing they spend money on, that's luxuries. So it's an industry that when things are going difficult, gets cut off quickly. And when things are picking up, that grows or that responds slowly, gets back to its norm slowly. And we've seen a lot of those in 2008, 2009, 2015. We've just experienced one, and we know maybe in the next 5 years there will always be a downpour in terms of the demand and in terms of where the market is. And what is important for us is to look at the long term, because we've got a mine plan that we will still be around until 2054, and we know that the key fundamentals are still in place for diamonds as a gemstone. And so we need to continue to invest during difficult times so that when the good times are there, we have the supply to be able to supply the market at a price that's probably at a premium price at that point in time. So there are challenges, but we can overcome them.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Mertens. And what really stood out for me was the skills development and the training and the investment, just the sheer investment that Debmarine has taken on, just to make sure that we get Namibians that are trained. Eight captains from a space of none. So well done to Debmarine. Beverly, you had something to say.
Yeah.
And I just want to throw one little question in there for you as well. Do you think Namibians really, really understand their industry and understand the challenges in this industry?
Not really. And I believe the reason behind that is because the diamond industry is viewed as an opaque industry. It's not very clear, the terminology, what goes behind it. And also what my colleague just said, in the sense that we basically, we produce a product that's internationally consumed. So that's also the difference, because we produce something that then we have to play on an international playing field. And there are a lot of challenges to that. So yes, our people could learn a little bit more about the industry, but I think also this is the reason why platforms such as this are being formed, so that we can create the platforms for people to learn about the industry and know about the industry. And to add to some of the challenges also, besides the capital intensiveness also, it is the skills, but also time. When you compare to countries like India, for example, they obviously have the skills, and they have in their skills, it is at such a point where they can manufacture their diamonds and polish their diamonds at such a rapid rate that we as Namibians are not able to. So simply because it's obviously our small population. So we cannot compete against a country where there is 1 billion people and Namibians of 2.5 million, for example, and then we have to try and churn into that. But there are opportunities, obviously, and especially when we look at niche opportunities where, play the underdog role in a sense, that there are opportunities for us, a small industry. And one of the things is in a sense of training our producers, because he was talking from obviously from the Debmarine perspective on the from their perspective. But when you look at obviously also the manufacturing perspective, that is a chance. How quick can you polish a diamond and what size diamonds? They can polish diamonds as minuscule and they can still facet it. We Namibians are still not at that point. So those are things that we need to invest in so that we are able to prolong our value chain. And when we prolong it, we're able to benefit it. Because if you compare the rough diamond industry, globally it's approximately about $8 billion. And if you move down to the value chain, it turns into about $160 billion US dollar industry. So you can see that there's so much more that we can benefit along the value chain. So those are things that we can look into. And I think as organizations, we can obviously also churn into to assist also the government on a national level.
I love where this conversation is going, and maybe on Diamond Talk we need to invite the educational institutions to see what is our appetite, where are we at the understanding that we need to begin to start bringing these types of products to the university so that Namibians can have an opportunity to train broadly, because I think currently that is still a bit of a challenge. I want to go to you, sir. I remember that on this segment of the program, we've had a number of times questions from our then studio audience that wanted clarity around the role of the Namibian banking system in the diamond sector. Do you think the Namibian banks, the commercial banks in Namibia, participate enough in the sector?
Well, it will be very difficult for me to really say whether they do or not, because this, like she said, it's an opaque industry where not a lot of information is disclosed to the public. But one thing that I do know for sure is that, yes, the banks are involved. The Bank of Namibia, every month, every quarter, they release what is called private sector credit extension, and in there you can see how much money actually went to the mining sector. So yes, definitely you can see that there is a lot of flows going to the mining sector, and this again, the business arrangement, but what it tells you is that there is an appetite for financing in that sector. And this is exactly what is keeping the sector to move, especially in difficult times like the COVID, where there was actually not a lot of sales, but the banks were still able to channel some funds there to keep the sector moving. So yes, definitely the banks are playing a crucial role, a critical role in the industry.
Mr. Mertens, I want to throw that question to you as well. Do you think there's scope for more?
Yeah, there's definitely scope for more, probably more in the manufacturing side. But I must say, I mean, we've always had the support of the local banks when we acquired our vessels. As far back as 2012, we had RMB at that point, as well as Standard Bank supporting us when we acquired that vessel. When we invest into our sampling vessel in 2016, at a tune of 2.3 billion, 80% of that was financed by two of the local banks in Namibia. And as you know, we were busy building a vessel for another 7 billion in Romania, which is about to be delivered probably in the middle of this year to start production next year. We have our 4 major banks, Bank Windhoek, Nedbank, RMB, as well as Standard Bank, are all in that pool of funding 80% of that, of that acquisition. So they are definitely assisting us, and I think what is required is you just need to give them a bankable business case, and they will be able to support, and they have been supporting us.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That's our thoughts around the panel right now. I think we're going to go into, we're going to take a short break now where we just, after all, it's Namibia's Independence Day, and I do not want us to lose sight of the fact that it's our birthday today. So this is a good time for us to take a break and just hear what those birthday messages are that some of our people had around for you and for I today. Please have a look.
The birthday message to Namibia would be, let's continue the good things that are happening. Let's change the bad things that are happening in this country. To NDTC, continue the good work, involve communities more, do better communication perhaps. And to the rest of the industry, the other jewelers, goldsmiths, everybody else who's involved in diamonds, continue the good work, sell diamonds as a good product to everybody you know, and make sure that also Namibians and non-Namibians see it as a special product that needs to be promoted.
I want to say happy birthday to Namibia for the sacrifices that our founding fathers and our ancestors have put in place, that we can today sit in a liberated Namibia and equally share into the wisdom and tap into the wisdom of our natural resources. It's because of theirs unwavered sacrifice. Thank you very much, Namibia, and happy birthday.
I think Namibia took a very bold step 31 years ago, and it has come a long, long way successfully. And I wish it many more years of success. And I know it has a lot of dreams and visions, which I am sure it will achieve. I know we are going through a tough year, but I'm sure we'll get over it. I feel, though I'm not a Namibian, I feel Namibian, and I really wish this country the best.
For the Namibians, I would say a happy 31st independence. I have seen it all evolved. It is not perfect, but we have kept it together. Hopefully, we can go for another 30 years that are peaceful, that are prosperous, and really, we can all look forward to serve this country as best as we can.
Thank you so much for staying with us. It's such a joy to have this discussion and share it with you. Please feel free to give us your thoughts, your comments, any questions that you feel this panel or this discussion can answer for you to help you understand or get a crystal picture of what goes on in this industry. We're happy to take those questions. Now, we will continue with our panelists shortly, but before we round up on recommendations on what we think we need to do going forward, let's just take a bit of a pause here and hear what other recommendations are from outside this room. Please stay tuned.
The bigger picture is, how can we look at long-term investment? And that should start with us as well.
Some of us just want to be involved at the mining level, but there's a huge value chain when you look at the diamond. I mean, if you go through what we call midstream, actually upstream, which is the mining side, and then we have what we call the midstream section, which is the distribution side, and then we call what we call the downstream, which is really where the consumer is involved. There's you can see the exponential increase in values when you go through those three areas. And ideally what I would like to see is that I would like to see Namibians being involved in all three areas, or actually be vertically integrated in all three areas to sort of get the benefits from all the areas, because you can see, as I said, you can see the increase in value in those areas. And if you are fully integrated in that area, you can reap the benefit from the value chain. At the moment, we're probably more just reaping the benefits from the upstream, which is the mining, and to some degree in the midstream. I would like us also participate in the downstream industry.
There's a lot of room for improvement. I don't think the general public is so aware of the different dynamics in the diamond industry, locally speaking. I'm not saying there haven't been any efforts to do so, but maybe there needs to be more. The Diamond Board could be more active. JASONA could be more active. I think a better cooperation between the different organizations. But yes, I do think that there's a lot more education to happen for the average person on the street to better understand the industry. And its challenges, because sometimes you see things on the news, and people will read that and say, oh, but that's not fair. But there's context, there's background, which if explained fully might make more sense to the common man.
We should not experiment with an industry that works well. It is highly controlled in many parts of the world. It sees to it at the moment that nobody can put his fingers into the cash register and take something out. Nobody would be able to siphon off proceeds that don't belong to that person. It's a very regulated, very orderly industry, but I personally also see it as ethical, professional. It's there to stay. And if we do it right in this country, then diamonds won't lose their sparkle.
So there we have some thoughts and ideas around recommendations going forward, what some of our speakers would like to see. I want to throw that question to all of us here on the panel. Mr. Lukela, as an economist with a broad overview of so much that happens economically and otherwise in our country, what are your views? What would be excellent recommendations for this industry going forward?
Yes, I am in agreement with the colleagues' recommendations. I just want to emphasize to say that this industry, as we have learned, that it's high-tech, it's capital-intensive, that speaks to the level of skills that is required at all the value chain, be it from the mining, where you actually take the diamond, to the polishing, to the distribution. You need specialized skills. And for me, I think that is where we must begin with. That's our departure point. And that skill must come with opportunity. We are not saying that they have to train their own. We are saying I can be trained elsewhere. I became a gemologist in 2004 from Germany. And I needed opportunity to come and evaluate. Yeah? So I was one of the few like you who were able to play around with the industry. But how many of our young people that have been trained to do gemology anywhere who can be absorbed? So we need that interaction, we need that conversation, because in the end, it's serving one Namibia, one industry. Secondly is the financing. And it's exciting to see that banks are really coming together, but we need more because there are a lot of challenges that need to be addressed by financing, infrastructure. But most of all, we need a conducive environment, politically, administratively, because that speaks to attraction of FDI. We need foreign investors to also come and help us develop this, but then they can only come if the environment in which they are going to operate is conducive enough. So for me, these are the key areas that we need to zoom in and get this ship moving.
Thank you for that. Beverly, I want to know from you, Mr. Lukela made mention of the fact that we need to draw in more investors, we need to create a climate to do so. In your view, I'm Namdia. Namdia is a brand. Do you think we're doing enough in that space? And in your view, what more can we do?
I think we need to look at it from a national level. And I believe, Namdia, for example, is something that we have started looking into and collaborating now with NDTC on various projects, etc. And I believe as an organization or as a country, we need to start sending one message. I believe that the diamond industry at the moment is a little bit segmented. Everybody's, telling their own narrative, telling their own story from their perspective. But I believe to create and draw more FDI within the industry is to actually create one narrative, because the diamond travels from your hand to my hand to that hand and to the consumer. It is one diamond. They just travel through the various channels through the value chain of Namibia. So if we are able to get together and sit around one table, craft a single narrative and a single story that we can tell the world about Namibia and create a brand for Namibia, I think that we could also assist in getting foreign direct investment within our country.
Thank you for that. Mr. Mertens, at the forefront of offshore mining, what do you think needs to happen going forward to make sure that we continue to be the best at what we do, to be in the forefront in what we do? Debmarine is a trendsetter and a trailblazer in this sense. What are your recommendations for this industry for the next 30 years?
I agree. There needs to be better collaboration in country, because it's the same thing that moves around a different pipeline. And then we also need to look at educating the people out there, so that when we talk diamonds, people are not talking about this this ghostly thing that, only a few people are benefiting from. Because the more good stories we tell, the more successes we share, the better it is for the country. Because if we're bashing the industry, we are just doing ourselves a disservice. Because then people will be looking around and say, why must I buy a Namibian diamond if nothing is happening in Namibia? But it's for us around the table to start sharing the story so that people can see, because sometimes people don't know. So we need to educate, we need to impart knowledge onto people so that people can see and say, wow, I don't have to be working for Debmarine Namibia or NAMDEB or NAMDEA or NDDC. I can, when I drive from Windhoek to Okahanya, I can see the good that diamonds have done for me. If I go from here in the new, go around to the airport, I can see what diamonds have done. If eventually we get the irrigation, going into for the dam, we can see these are things that are here because of diamonds. So we need to start telling those stories from the politicians to the men on the street, so we can see and so we can help each other build this industry.
Very, very good way for you to lead us into our next segment. We're one family. We children in the same household, if you want to put it that way. We just happen to have different roles in the household, but we are all children in the same household nonetheless, if you can forgive me for using that analogy. But before we wrap up today's program, it is our birthday after all. Namibia did turn 31 after all. And on that very, very good note that you just shared with us about what diamonds are doing in the country, what is your message for Namibians that are watching today on Independence Day?
I think happy birthday. Because, it's still a young country, 31 years old. We should be glad because of, we've got peace. We have a bright future ahead of us. And we just need to work together, and then we will prosper. So happy birthday to everyone around the table and everyone out there. So let's work together and make this country a great country. It can if we work together.
There we go. Ms. Kusamon.
Happy Independence Day, Namibia. I just want to add to what my colleague said. I think the most important thing is the ability to stand together and work together, but also creating value as individuals. We have a dependency on our, government in a sense. And I feel that because of that, we don't see the value and the abilities within ourselves. So as Namibians, I would like to say, believe in yourself, see the potential within yourself, and add and bring that value that you have to the table so that we can continue building our nation.
Sir, your
Wow,
thoughts?
I think they've said it all. I can only add to say, happy birthday, Namibia. The brightest diamond is the one that has been polished enough. And as we enter 31 years, let us use the experience that we've gone through, 31 years of macroeconomic challenges. Let's use those as being polished so that we can be much, much brighter than we were.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. And from me, it's really happy birthday, Namibia. And pretty much like the journey of a diamond, when it starts on the bottom of the ocean or it starts on the mining floor, it isn't particularly all that great. The greatness of that diamond is really, really only revealed at the end of the value chain. So when it's in that ring, like the beautiful ring that Ms. Kusamont is wearing, that's really when you start seeing the beauty and the value of that diamond. Pretty much like that, as a country, we've gone to your point, sir, we've gone through a few ups and downs, but they are not new and they are not unique to Namibia. The global pandemic that has hit the world really doesn't have a special impact on Namibia. People everywhere are feeling it. We can still celebrate Namibia and we can still take pride in the fact that we are Namibians. And as Namibians, we are to each contribute our best, bring our best to the table to make sure that 30 years from now, when we have a conversation like this, we can look at each other and say, oh my goodness, look at what we did. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I wish you a wonderful, wonderful long weekend. Please take care of yourself. Make sure that you mask up, sanitize, make sure that you drive the appropriate way on our roads so that we can keep one another safe. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, goodbye.